Hi guys, DJI have made the Pocket 3 without a doubt the new king for making low light videos due to its large sensor and exceptional image processing and with its special low light mode. But we're only going to get good low light image quality if we choose appropriate settings. So what are the best recommended settings to get the best low light image quality? Now, unlike other videos, rather than say use this setting or that setting, I'm instead going to do something different. I'm going to give you the process and the thinking that I go through so that hopefully you can then select the best settings for your particular low light situation. Hi, my name is Tim from 40 Tech, and my channel is all about teaching others to learn how to get the very best out of their cameras, their tech and equipment. So if you have any questions or you would like a video demonstrating something, then let me know in the comments and I'll be happy to help. Okay, let's get straight down to business. So I've seen a few videos with people sharing their exact settings for low light videos for the Pocket 3, and they say this shutter speed, that ISO, etc. But all low light situations are completely different to each other with completely different light levels. So no setting is going to be appropriate for every single scenario. So I thought what's more useful to explain is the actual process for choosing the settings for the situation that you're currently in. So rather than just copying someone else's settings parrot fashion, let's learn how to actually pick our own settings. So I'm going to explain the process and the thinking that I go through, and then I'm going to show the process in action with a couple of different situations at night. Let's now look at the process that I would go through for choosing the settings for low light videos. So I'd obviously start off looking at a resolution of 4K where possible. And for the frame rate, I would normally go for around 30 frames per second, because this is more than adequate, I think, for doing like low light videos. And now moving on, and for the actual sharpness and noise reduction values, I would choose -2 for sharpness and -1 for noise reduction. Now these, after some experimentation, are found to be, for me personally, the best settings I use to find that it's not, it's not too sharp. So otherwise, anything higher than that, it's going to start to cause some digital noise. So -2 I found is perfect for that. And as for the noise reduction, I found anything higher than -1, the noise reduction is actually quite aggressive in the Pocket 3. And then in terms of the white balance itself, now it's very difficult to actually give a setting for this because it very much depends on the situation that you're in. For example, in moonlight situations, you might choose a cooler white balance, perhaps around 4000, 4200, something like that. But in a sort of street scene which has got a lot of artificial light, you might choose something like 5000 or 5200 Kelvin. Let's now look at the shutter speed. So for the shutter speed, I would always kind of double the frame rate. So we've got a frame rate of 30 frames per second. A shutter speed I would go for minimum around about 1/60, and the reason for this is that we want to prevent anything slower than this, and it's got a risk of actually having more stutter effects in the video, so you want to keep the shutter speed around about twice the frame rate where possible. Let's now have a look at the ISO. So I would start off with ISO quite low, perhaps 400, and then I would absolutely increase the light levels where necessary. So if that's 400 is too dark, you would start to increase the ISO one stop at a time, all the way up to perhaps the highest and maximum ISO, which is 6400 in a normal video mode. If we find that maximum ISO is not bright enough still, the next stop I will probably do is to actually then try to reduce the shutter speed one stop down to match the frame rate of 130. Now I would try to avoid doing this where possible, but I would rather do that than increase the ISO further. If we then find that's not bright enough still, we would then change across to low video mode, which is going to give us access to higher ISOs. So that goes up to much higher ISO rates. So I'll just keep on increasing the ISO until I reach the maximum level in this particular video mode. So that's pretty much the process that I would go through choosing to get the setting. So as I said, I'm going to now do some demonstrations with two different scenarios depending on showing different light levels. Alright, so that's the theory anyway. So I'm now going to do a couple of quick demonstrations in different lighting conditions. One is a typical street environment with ambient light from buildings and street lamps. So we can get away with just using the normal video mode. But the second situation is much more extreme with no ambient lighting. It's virtually pitch black. So it's going to force us to push the Pocket 3 to the absolute limits of its low light video. Now it's so dark that my iPhone was refusing to even focus properly, so I apologise a little bit in advance for that. Okay, let's see what we'll do in this particular scenario here. It's actually quite a lot of light. It's not too dark. It's more of a street scene. There's quite a lot of street lights and stuff. So first of all, again, I would start by ensuring that the sharpness and the noise reduction is about -2, which you have here, and noise reduction is -1. Hope you can see that on the screen. Okay, and then we're going to set our white balance, and I've found around about 3700 in this particular example. Just generally sort of slide up and slide down the scale, finding what looks about natural to my eyes, and just often we'll just cross-reference it with the auto white balance, see what it thinks, and then just sort of kind of tweak it accordingly to my tastes. So I think around about 3.2, maybe 3.5 will be about right. And then next I'm going to set the frame rate. So I would set the frame rate to 30 frames per second, and the resolution to 4K, obviously on the highest resolution possible. There's no need to set the frame rate any higher than 30 frames per second, because the higher the frame rate, the more light you're going to need. So 30 frames per second in this scenario is perfectly fine. Right, and then we're going to set our shutter speed next. So in Pro mode, I'm going to go to exposure, and generally I would start the ISO around about 400 or so, and then sort of go up from there, and I would set the shutter speed to about twice the frame rate, so 1/60, just to see what that looks like. And if it looks too dark, which it does at the moment, I'm going to start by increasing the ISO up a couple of notches and just keep going up until the exposure looks about right. So around about 3200 is probably a level that I would be quite comfortable doing. As you can see here, looks not too bad at all. Now if I wanted to bring the ISO down a little bit, what we could do is just stop recording for a moment. I would cut back to exposure, and I would reduce, if I needed to, my shutter speed down to my frame rate, but no lower than the frame rate, especially if something like I'm doing time lapse or something like that, because you can go down to this level because not doing very much movement. But if you're going to something like walking tours, you probably would need to try and leave it at twice the frame rate, for the reasons why I explained earlier. But if we can reduce the shutter speed down to like 130, we could then compensate by lowering the ISO down to 1600 if I can get the damn thing selected. Come on. There we go. And I think that exposure is just about looks alright. So let's just give that a record. So that's what we have for a demonstration on setting the exposure with the Pocket 3. Okay, so first of all, change the sharpness and the noise reduction. So we come down to swipe to the right, and then we've got image adjustments here. Let's change the sharpness at -2 and the noise reduction at -1. I'm just going to then change the white balance, which we can come up to here. So I'm in Pro settings. I'm just going to click on white balance in the top corner here, and it's going to change that something. If we ran the moonlight around 4000, so let's change manual, and let's change it to like 5000. Maybe something like that, just to give the little bit of the glow to the picture. And so we've got the white balance set. We're going to then change the manual exposure. So I'm just going to go to across the manual. And what I do is I'm going to, first of all, before I set the shutter speed, I'm going to pick a frame rate. So swipe from the bottom here, and we've got 4K and 30 frames per second. So let's just set the frame rate to something like 30 frames per second. I think that'd be fine for something like this. And I've got the resolution at 4K. So I'm going to come to now swipe across and change my shutter speed to basically twice the frame rate, so 1/60 is about right. And then we're going to change the ISO. So I start around about 400. I'm going to increase that guy. And it's not very easy on this little tiny screen to keep going up to something like 6400, and just look at the exposure, and the exposure is somewhat still low. So this is where we're going to have to actually either reduce the shutter speed down a bit further, or I'm going to go to the low light mode. So let's first of all go across. So I've just set my shutter speed to 1/30, just to add a little bit more light in, and it's looking not too bad at all. But we could actually change to, if we wanted to make it even brighter, go to low video mode, or low light mode, which you can do by clicking on the bottom down here and then swiping across to low light mode like that. Okay, and then what we're going to do is swipe across and change the white balance. It's going to change the balance back to what it was, which is around about 5500 or something like that. Let's make it a bit more orange. Come on, come on, come on. That would do, something like that. And then go to exposure, and we've got it to 6400 on the ISO. Let's just now increase it. So in low light mode, we can actually increase it to much higher than in normal video mode. So I've got down to 12800, and I'm going to go to 16,000, which is the highest I can do. And as you can see, that is about as bright as we can realistically get on the Pocket 3, but this is a very, very dark and shadowy situation here. So, you know, that's the best I think we're going to get from this camera. I can just do a couple of shots here, and you can see the quality of the picture is pretty reasonable, I think. Okay, so this is a little live demo of how you can set the process I go through for setting the low light shots with the Pocket 3. Okay, so I really hope that this flowchart approach is useful rather than just listing some settings. Now, I wanted to show how each situation could require different settings depending on the light level. And showing the approach that I go through will help hopefully you gain an understanding so that you can follow a similar approach when doing your own low light shots. Let me know in the comments what you thought, and if you have any questions other than that, I'm signing off, so thanks for watching, and I shall see you soon on the next video.